Good evening. I'm Clarice Summersall. I'm one of the senior administrators here at Montgomery College. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Darian Pollard, our president, the administrators and the faculty and staff of Montgomery College, I would like to welcome you, including our Accenture partners and our panelists and our students, to this capstone presentation talking about sustainability. This is the final event in the first year of our Skills to Succeed joint venture with Accenture. At the fall 2011 opening meeting, Dr. Pollard shared Montgomery College's mission statement and vision, which reads in part, "We empower our students to change their lives and we enrich the life of our community." Our partnership with Accenture provides a wonderful opportunity to empower our students to examine their options for a future where they will be competing for jobs with people from Bethesda and Bangladesh. Moreover, we live in a global economy, and being globally aware and globally competitive are essential skills. We are enriching the life of our Montgomery College community by launching the Skills to Succeed initiative this academic year, and by bringing you this panel presentation this evening as part of our Earth Day celebration. We are excited about embarking on a partnership with Accenture as part of its Skills to Succeed initiative, which plans to equip 250,000 people around the world by 2015 with the skills to get a job or to build a business. Part of that initiative is to work collaboratively with corporations, NGOs, and governmental agencies to help developing countries to build sustainable infrastructures. You will be hearing a lot about that momentarily. Many thanks to our Montgomery College and Accenture planning team for making this capstone panel presentation on sustainability possible. And now I would like to share a very special video presentation with you. Once the video presentation is finished, I will introduce our moderator, who will then introduce the panel for today. Let's look at the video together.
Development in the 21st century is going to be different.
The barriers are coming down between the private sector, civil society and government, and now is the time for all of these three sectors to work together.
What was previously perhaps social issues or charity issues for business are now very much strategic issues for business. Businesses are increasingly looking at emerging markets as new sources of growth.
The source of new customers, new products and services.
NGOs that before were seen as charities are now seen as strategic partners in their ecosystems.
Through the relationship of business, government and the development sector players coming together that we can really have a big impact.
This is about harnessing the latent power, the socio-economic power of business to deliver real development impact on the ground. ADP doesn't fit into the normal labels of being a foundation, a CSR initiative, or indeed a pro bono group. We're a business within a business, a social enterprise and a corporate construct.
To channel the business and technology skills that Accenture has to a very different set of clients, and that's the international development sector.
We're also bringing the weight of Accenture behind us. That's access to our knowledge exchange, it's access to subject matter expertise, it's access to our senior execs who support our ADP program.
What is unique about ADP is our business model. It's based on a three-way contribution between Accenture giving us access to its best performing people from around the world, free of profit margin, free of overheads,
Secondly, the individual makes a very important contribution through a salary cut that they take for the duration of the time that they work with us.
And the third contribution comes from the client.
But the fee that they pay is significantly reduced and really in line with development sector norms.
And all in all, we're trying to break even, be not for profit, but at the same time, not for loss.
ADP works with the equivalent in development of the Global Fortune 500.
So ADP has three main different types of clients.
We work with large international NGOs such as Oxfam, World Vision, Save the Children,
Secondly, the foundations.
the Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation.
For developing country governments,
Helping them think about how they make the many parts of the organisation work more effectively together with limited resources.
Work that we are increasingly doing more and more of is in helping broker and manage cross-sector partnerships.
The opportunities are amazing for what we can do when we bring together the right players in the right forums.
I would like to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer.
And what this project is doing is managing to upgrade the skills of those nurses in an incredibly short period of time. There's no reason why it couldn't be replicated across the whole of Africa.
the emerging role for ADP is a broker and as an integrator, working at the nexus of the sectors.
To foster, create and implement cross-sector partnerships that make real change where it's needed.
We are uniquely well placed as an organisation to really bring together the assets and the power of each of the sectors.
We can help to bring the distinctive capabilities of the private sector, civil society and the public sector.
There's really a convergence of issues of development challenges. There's a convergence of interests between the sectors, and therefore we're going to see a convergence of solutions, which will bring the best of the private sector in conjunction with civil society and other development actors to bring a real systems approach to tackling these big global challenges.
And now, I would like to welcome Chris Jurgens, our moderator. Mr. Jurgens is a former member of Accenture's ADP team. Currently, he is the Division Chief for Global Partnership, Office of Innovation and Development Alliance, IDEA, U.S. Agency for International Development. With that backdrop, I present Chris Jurgens. Enjoy and learn.
Thank you, Clarice. It's my pleasure to have the privilege to moderate this outstanding panel we have, focused on the broad theme of sustainability. Sustainability is a word that means many things in many different contexts. You can talk about environmental sustainability, you can talk about social and economic sustainability in developing countries. You can think about sustainability on a global scale, in terms of demographic trends and global environmental challenges. You can think about sustainability very local scale, in your own home, in your own community. And finally, sustainability is an issue that cuts across sectoral boundaries. The government has a role to play in sustainability, the nonprofit sector, and of course, businesses like Accenture and businesses around the world. And I'm excited about this panel today because I think we have individuals that represent that full breadth of sustainability issues, global and local, nonprofit, government, and the private sector. So let me introduce our esteemed panelists and invite them to come up to the front here. I'll start with my former colleague, Roger Ford. Roger and I worked a long time together at Accenture Development and Partnerships. Roger has over 20 years serving clients in the corporate sector, in the nonprofit sector, and international development. He currently serves as the Director of Global Operations for Accenture Development Partnerships, about which you heard in the video already, one of Accenture's pioneering initiatives in the sustainability space, channeling our skills to the development sector. Prior to joining ADP, Roger served Accenture clients in the energy industry, and he has a long record of experience spanning business and technology prior to that. Next to Roger, we have Dr. Alison Padget. Alison brings close to a decade of experience working in international development of the nonprofit sector. She currently serves as Chief of Party for NetHope for a major initiative with USAID called the Global Broadband Innovations Initiative. And prior to joining NetHope, she served as a consultant to the USAID mission to Russia, assisting the Office of Regional Development with North Caucasus and Russian Far East programming. Before that, she lived in Beijing, China, and managed a program to prevent malnutrition in young children living in rural Chinese orphanages. So she brings a broad base of international development experience. Next we have David Taghipour, who is a former student here at MC, is that right? He is also the founder of the Eco Design Center here locally in Wheaton Silver Spring. The Eco Design Center offers savvy solutions to some of the most challenging design dilemmas around the house, and we'll hear more about that. Dave's dedication to people on the planet are at the core of what the Design Center was founded upon, and we look forward to hearing about that local innovation. Next we have Ricarda Ganjam. Ricarda is the director of the Local Market Initiative for Accenture here in the Metro Washington, D.C. area. That program focuses on business development, local image, and people engagement for Accenture, and involves the partnership we're here today to talk about. Prior to that, she currently serves as an executive coach, working with senior leaders to achieve higher performance in their careers and lives. And prior to Accenture, she had a varied career, including work with the University of Maryland European Division and serving as a manager with the U.S. Army 235th Base Support Command, among other things. And finally, last but not least, we have Doug Weisburger. Doug is a senior planning specialist in Montgomery County's Department of Environmental Protection, where he coordinates community sustainability programs and manages the Green Business Certification Program. Prior to working with the county, he also had a varied career involving international development work that includes serving at the Peace Corps, both as staff and as a volunteer, serving with Ashoka, and with the Council on Foreign Relations. So look forward to hearing perspectives from all of our panels here today. And I think what we'll do is we'll start a little bit with the global side of sustainability and hear some perspectives from the international development sector, and move to talking more about local sustainability here in Montgomery County. So Roger, let me start off with you. We heard a little bit about ADP, Accenture Development Partnerships, but take a step back and speak a bit about this whole theme of convergence that came up, and why corporations like Accenture's today are thinking about engaging in sustainability and engaging in cross-sectoral partnerships, partnerships that bring together business with NGOs, with development sector actors, with governments.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, Accenture Development Partnerships has been around for about 10 years now, and it's been an interesting journey, and it actually mirrors a lot of what has happened on what I'll say the global theme of convergence. When Accenture Development Partnerships was founded, it really was founded to serve the NGO marketplace. And we found ourselves working very closely with small, what I'll say, field-based offices of NGOs, working in very rural locations, in a very siloed environment back then. And this is in the early 2000s, so it's not too long ago where we found ourselves in that siloed environment. As those years came on, the decade of 2000 to 2010, what we began to see was more donor play, and as well as more internationalization across the NGOs. So again, in the early 2000s, it was very siloed, moving towards more of a globalized environment with the donors kind of interplaying amongst themselves. And finally, with the advent of more mobile technologies and corporations wanting to enter the international development sector, we started to see more and more corporations begin to play a role in the international development sector. ADP sits at really the nexus of what I'll say the corporate private sector and these international development organizations. So in our early days, we kind of saw the corporate clients sitting on one side of the house and ADP sitting on what I'll say the inverse side of the house. As these two worlds started to cross one another, we started to see that really corporates could play a key role in these development themes. And subsequently, we also saw NGOs starting to say, you know, I can't just sit on my own anymore and go to donors and get the money I need to run my programs. I really need to be embracing the private sector to create sustainable development outcomes. And really that's been the theme of convergence. It's really been the fact that you can't just continually pump money into the international development sector and expect the outcomes to be sustainable. Really what happens is, over time, you might be, let's say, supporting a program around agriculture or one around education via an NGO with donor funding, and eventually that money is going to run out. So with the need to make a cyclical, sustainable environment, you obviously need some type of economic development, and that's where the corporation comes to play. The whole convergence theme is really engaging what I'll say the local communities internationally in development themselves through sustainable business models. So with ADP again, we found ourselves in a unique position that Accenture plays with over what I'll say several hundred of the major multinational corporations, and having the ability to basically approach them as well as them approaching us and say, you know, let's look for opportunities to partner with the NGOs that ADP works with the governments and donors that we have relationships with, and converge these sectors together. Now, it's not just Accenture Development Partnerships that's doing that. There's many other consultancies as well as many other players in this marketplace. But ADP does find itself in a very unique position to broker these partnerships together. And I will mention one that comes to mind, and that is one that we're doing with Unilever in Tanzania. And it resonates well here in that there's a lot of smallholder farmers in Tanzania that would find it very hard to approach a large multinational corporation when they might have 100 acres that they're farming onions or some other commodity and actually sell those crops. So it's really the role of a corporation like Unilever, if they ultimately want to sell finished goods into Tanzania as part of their, what we call the value chain, to actually engage small producers. So in the case of what Accenture Development Partnerships did, is we actually created a partnership, a convergence between the smallholder farmers of Tanzania, the government, Oxfam, which supports a lot of small entrepreneurs and farmers and others, as well as Unilever, to train these farmers to grow commodities that could be purchased by Unilever into their value chain. So what that means is they're the small suppliers, and ultimately Unilever could use those crops to then sell finished product back into the Tanzanian market. So Chris, it really illustrates the example of those sectors converging together. So ultimately the farmers are paid for growing that crop. They can use that money to invest, to actually purchase products from Unilever and create that whole cyclical economic development cycle that has worked so well. And we'll have more examples along the way, but that's really the role that ADP has been able to play, is brokering those relationships between the corporate as well as the civil society, government, and donor sectors, and do it in a sustainable way, which we're pretty excited about.
Thanks, Roger. That does a great job of bringing to life how this convergence theme has sort of manifested itself at Accenture in a sort of corporate perspective of engaging with NGOs. I might next turn to Alison to hear a little bit more from the NGO side back in terms of how is the NGO sector and the development sector responding to this trend, engaging with business, and particularly from the Net Hope perspective, how has technology impacted that? And how is technology both enabling new approaches to achieving development impact, but also enabling collaboration between entities?
Right, that's a good question, Chris. Net Hope has a number of NGO members. We have 34 international NGOs that have come together in a consortium that is Net Hope to do projects together, and it's all technology focused. And in support of that, we have a number of private sector partners, generally technology companies. that really value the work that we're doing, not only because it's the right thing to do, using technology to solve some really challenging development problems, but also because it's the right thing to do for business. They see emerging markets, they want to get in there. NGOs are in there, they've been in that space for a long time. They know the area, they know the people, they have a lot of trust built up, they understand the political dynamics. And so they really see from a business perspective that NetHope and our members can give them some entry and some resources to help them figure out how to enter these emerging markets. I'd like to touch on a point that Roger brought up about economic sustainability. And like he mentioned, you never want to go into a place as an international NGO and do a project that's not going to be around 10 years later because you left and the funding, went away, or, there wasn't demand for the service you were providing, there wasn't a sustainable business practice that local entrepreneurs, internet service providers, for example, would take up and continue with. So one of our approaches to development and infrastructure is to always look for sustainable business models. So if we go and decide we're going to provide mobile network services to a community that doesn't have it, we need to make sure we do it in a way that's appealing to local network operators or corporate partners. So looking for low cost, low power, environmentally sustainable solutions that generate enough revenue for whoever's implementing them to keep them going over the long term.
Thanks, Alison. And would you be able to speak to any example that sort of brings that to life in the current work you're doing or previous work?
Sure, absolutely. We're planning some new projects with USAID. And it's really exciting, actually, because we are taking mobile internet to rural communities that don't have any access at this point to internet or voice services. And what's interesting about this is a lot of these places are completely off the power grid, so they have no electricity, much less mobile or internet. And what would usually happen in these situations is a mobile network operator would go in and they would build a big cell tower, and it would be powered by diesel generators, and it would be expensive, it would be noisy, it would pollute the environment on the topic of environmental sustainability. But there's some great new technology out now that uses solar panels to power these micro cell stations, so that communities that don't have any electricity can now have internet through mobile. But you still have the problem of demand. You still have to have enough revenue and enough demand for those services that it will pay for itself. So what we're working on now is a new project to outfit these mobile stations with big enough solar panels that they produce more electricity than you actually need to run the station. And then we'll be selling that power at a low cost, obviously, to the community. So it could be a small scale thing like a mobile power station where you can charge your mobile phones, all the way to powering local clinics, schools, community centers. So it's a great way to be creative, to be environmentally sustainable, and to create business models to show local businesses that this is something that they can do and make revenue and they can repeat.
Thanks. That's a fascinating example of using a technology that's very environmentally friendly in terms of solar technology and using that to address another element of sustainability, people living in poverty, and doing that through a sustainable business model. So thanks for bringing that to life. And I know Accenture and NetHope have a very active relationship and represent an interesting form of partnering between the corporate sector and the NGO sector. I wonder if you might speak, Roger, to an example of how Accenture and NetHope and their members have worked together, bringing together their capabilities to address the sustainability or development challenge.
Sure. NetHope and Accenture have a very deep relationship, a very strong partnership, and there's a number of examples we could cite here. Probably one that comes to mind is really the work that we have been doing with NetHope in Haiti. Right after the earthquake in Haiti, Accenture, as well as NetHope and its members, were the organizations on the ground helping with the rebuild. And there's some very interesting examples where Accenture brought a couple of its corporate partners into Haiti, actually. I'm sure many of the folks in the audience are familiar with the Best Buy Geek Squad. And through our partnership with Best Buy, they're one of Accenture's strategic clients, we actually brought the Geek Squad into Haiti. And they helped rig up some of the damage after the earthquake and get the schools back online. And one of the things that we saw and NetHope realized early on was there was a lot of folks, both before and after the earthquake, that needed jobs, obviously. That's still a major problem in Haiti. But they lacked any type of work experience to actually get a job. So it was the insight of a number of NetHope members to come up with what we call the ICT Skills Academy, which is actually the idea of giving folks an education in IT and actually the work experience to accompany it. So with a grant actually from the Accenture Foundation and our Skills to Succeed agenda, the work of Accenture Development Partnerships with adding consultants on the ground, both technical and management consulting, to bring it all together, and the work of NetHope and its members, we actually launched the NetHope Skills Academy, which gave young Haitians a strong background in general, what we call ICT skills, IT skills in the U.S. market here, enough where they could actually then intern at some of the local NGOs and small businesses to actually put something on their resume. And obviously that's very important to get your first job. And the Academy is up on, has had a very successful launch. It's been up for close to a year now. They've graduated several classes of, what I'll say, probably close to 100, maybe even 200 technologists. And it's a great model that NetHope is now taking to Africa. It's going to bring that to scale and roll that out along with additional support from Accenture, Microsoft, Intel, and Cisco. So again, bringing those together, Chris, and creating a very skills-oriented, market-based outcome.
Thanks, Roger. Great example of innovation in a market that really needs innovation, following a pretty dramatic disaster there. You mentioned Skills to Succeed as part of that, and Ricarda, I know Skills to Succeed is Accenture's corporate citizenship theme. So could you talk a little bit about Skills to Succeed, about corporate citizenship at Accenture, and how corporate citizenship both aligns to our core business interests and aligns to sort of our core values and our role in the local community?
Sure, great, thanks. I think as I was listening to you both talking about some of the key points with your organizations, I think about the evolution that Accenture has experienced in corporate citizenship as well. We used to have very much the mindset of giving cash to organizations and letting them run with it. Over time, we have really focused on impact and making sure that we're delivering sustainable programs that will go on after we give money and after our people may leave. So I think overall, if we look at corporate citizenship at Accenture, first of all, people tend to look at Accenture as a good quality company that they can believe in terms of our clients. But then the next step is really that they're looking also at our people and the impact that they can make beyond just the clients that they're serving. So we have embedded within all of our processes really a focus on high performance and delivering high performance to our clients. Our corporate citizenship point of view really takes that same high performance point of view to nonprofits that we may be working with. And Dr. Summersall had mentioned earlier, our goal around corporate citizenship has really become refined around a very specific target of giving 250,000 people around the world the skills to get a job or build a business. So that plays out at a global role where it essentially maps person to person. For every employee within Accenture, you would impact one person around the world with the skills to succeed or get a job. So my role is actually very local and focused on the local skills to succeed impact that we're having in the Metro DC region. And part of that has been with the relationship with Montgomery College, going into some of the classrooms and talking about some of the skills that we know people need to get a job when they're finishing school. In addition to the hardcore education concepts that you get in your curriculum, there are some other soft skills and practical skills that may not come up in those courses that we know are proven through research that can be applicable to getting a job, first job, or the next job in your career. Some of the other partnerships that I'm involved with locally include the KIPP charter schools, the Knowledge is Power program charter schools. It started out as a small seed in Metro DC, working with the 10 KIPP DC schools that are here, and we've just launched into a national partnership with KIPP where we'll be expanding our reach, helping the students get to and through college to really have an impact on the cycle of poverty. I mean, to give you a sense of how dire the situation is for students who go to a KIPP charter school, most of them are living in urban cities and have very low high school graduation rates typically in their neighborhoods. In DC, the graduation rate is right around 53%. If you look in the neighborhoods where KIPP schools are operating, the graduation rate is typically 19%. In KIPP schools, they're achieving a graduation rate now of about 93%. And so they've identified that about 90% of their students get accepted to college. And as they've been tracking that, they've now found out that about 30% of their students are actually graduating from college. So the next step is to really start tackling how do we get our students not just through high school and not just to college, but actually through college and ready for life and a career to really break the cycle of poverty. So much of our focus now with KIPP is on the high school students, getting them prepared for college, thinking about the life skills that they need to be successful in college and for their first job, and also supporting KIPP in some college partnerships to continue to support the students as they're in college, thinking about the skills that they need to have an internship while they're in college, and their first job when they're graduating from college, and really looking at the big picture of a career versus just a job, which they may or may not have been exposed to in the community where they currently live. I'd also say that within corporate citizenship, it's really just tied to our core values in most everything that we do, from a sustainability perspective in terms of leaving the place that we live a little bit better than we found it. Many of our projects, our client teams, have eco teams where they focus on how can we bring sustainability into our own practices. That then cascades down to the client that they're working with, where if our Accenture team has some ideas on no longer using paper and printing out presentations when they're going to meetings, and instead using an iPad to show their presentations, the next thing you know, the client is demanding that same thing and wants to experience that in their leadership meetings as well. Another piece that's an important part for us in corporate citizenship is around inclusion and diversity. It's a big focus, again, around sustainable practices and making a difference in the community where we're living and working. And we really find that the focus that we have on inclusion and diversity enables a variety of our people to come together on topics of interest and to really expand their networks and improve their likelihood of success within the firm. I think we do give back regularly across the globe. We give both in terms of money and in terms of our services. We do a number, in addition to the ADP program, we do a number of pro bono projects with nonprofits who may be too small for actually being a client of Accenture. And that's very rewarding for our people. So the other piece that you were asking about was sort of around employment. And what we have found is that our people really demand this kind of focus on giving back. Millennials, I think many of you in the audience are millennials as I look around, really have a strong desire to give back to the communities where they're living. When we look at our recruiting pool each year in the college campuses that we're going to, we actually found that one of our biggest competitors on college campuses is Teach for America. So we're finding that we lose about 40% of our new recruits each year to Teach for America. So, I mean, thinking about, people wanting to go into a high-performance organization like Teach for America, making an impact on the community, but they're also considering an organization like Accenture where they would have a very different focus, but also be focused on high performance. So that, to me, is a very telling statistic about the trends that we see in employment. I think also in DC, we do an Accenture Day of Service that has really been brought forth by the need for our people, or the desire for our people to engage in the community. And so essentially one day a year, we have an office-wide meeting, and then we fan out across the region, and typically 2,000 people go off and do projects. Again, started out very much like going and painting a school, going out and cleaning up a garden, but over these last few years, as we focus more and more on impact, we're now looking at what are the skills we might be able to impart in those 4 hours that we're donating in the afternoon. So less on the time that we're spending and more on the actual impact that we can make. I think the other piece that you just asked about was giving. Giving is, of course, another aspect of corporate citizenship for us. Each year we have an annual giving campaign that gives our people an opportunity to really give back to organizations that are meaningful to them. It's not required for anyone to participate, but yet we have a high percentage of our employees who look for aligning their personal giving both to Accenture goals and to their own personal goals as well.
Great, thanks, Ricarda. That paints a really rich picture of how Accenture as a global company is engaging in the local community to support education, to support employment skills development, to promote environmental sustainability within the company and within the community. I'd like to now turn to Doug and Dave to hear a little bit more about how local companies are engaging in these issues. Local companies are promoting environmental sustainability in a way that's good for the community and the environment, but also delivers on their bottom line. So maybe start with you, Doug. Or
do you want to tackle that first, and I'll chime in?
Sure. Well, for example, All Eco Center is a company based on very simple but fundamental values that I think could benefit any company or person as a whole. It's really about respect for each other, for the planet, and if you apply that to any business model, I think it will only benefit the people and the bottom line. All Eco Center, we're proud to say, one of the first companies to be certified by the Green Business Certification Program, amongst other industry standards that basically show the community, the local community in our case, that we are making efforts and taking steps to be more sustainable and environmentally friendly in everything that we do. We bring to it a much smaller local point of view compared to the wonderful panel here. And for example, our company is designed to bring all sustainable, recycled, environmentally friendly products in one place under one roof so that educated consumers who care about their families, their health, the environment could feel comfortable just going to one place and getting everything that they need versus running around town to find everything they need. But essentially, I'm sorry. The other point about the environmental problems, for example, people are always going to be growing and developing and undertaking harmful things for the environment. So every little thing that we can do makes a difference. And
the Eco Center helps individuals be able to take steps in that way in some of the choices that they make around their home. Is that
exactly? We do our little part. It's a small company, but people are really receptive to our concept and appreciate what we're doing. When people walk through the door, it's never about trying to sell them anything. It's simply a matter of providing materials and education and helping them along their process, whether it be a small homeowner who's looking to just do something small in the house, or larger companies who may need to meet LEED and other industry standards that could find everything in one place.
And have you found that local residents, local consumers have welcomed that approach, that opportunity to
Luckily,
make more
yes.
sustainable decisions?
They've been very kind, and yes, especially this local community. They're very well in tune with what's going on,
right.
And I think kind of at the cutting edge of what's going on.
Great. Maybe Doug, building on that from the wider county perspective.
Yeah, sure. I'm on the phone on a daily basis or weekly basis with folks like Dave, which is a great pleasure. And Dave not only provides environmentally preferable products, but he's also walking the walk in the day-to-day operations. And so while there are a lot of I've been seeing over the last 5-10 years, companies around the county popping up and growing, providing these sorts of services that are directly sort of addressing some key environmental issues. So, for example, we have organic grocery stores and energy auditors and retrofitters and clean energy providers, whether that's wind, solar, geothermal, composting companies, green printing companies converting used restaurant grease into biofuel, organic beverage providers. There also is an exciting newer entity in Bethesda Green, which is a green incubator. So we have these the brilliant eco-entrepreneurs who are coming up with cutting-edge, next-generation technologies and solutions to environmental issues. I met a young, recently graduated student who has a lawn mowing maintenance company, and electric lawnmowers, and he said he was going to rig up his truck somehow to put some solar panels on there so that he could advertise that it's just low carbon maintenance. If you go down to Stroh-Snyder's right over here in downtown Silver Spring, you'll see someone from the Green Business Incubator who's created this product that is sort of similar to Energy Star, the EPA program, but it actually gives you a 5-year sort of analysis of what those energy costs are going to be to run a coffee maker. So he's created this labeling process that gives the consumer say, okay, well, it might cost a little more, but over 5 years, I'm going to buy, save this back and some, and I'm going to be helping the environment. So there are lots of these companies in a sort of progressive county such as Montgomery County, where consumers are aware and want to find ways to lighten their ecological footprint. But the program, Dave is doing two things. Not only is he selling those products, but he's also walking the walk, as I said. And we certified him through the Montgomery County Green Business Certification Program, which I manage, which is basically about day-to-day operations, behavioral change, sort of a complement, if you will, to LEED certification, which many of you might be familiar with. This, I think this might be a LEED certified building. Certainly the college is ahead of the game in many of those. But the LEED focuses on buildings and major systems. Our program, the Green Business Certification Program, on day-to-day operations, policies, behavioral change. So we have a lot of companies that might not be offering a green product or service. Maybe it's a law firm. Maybe it's an accounting firm. We have 3 accounting firms certified, which is really interesting. We have an architect. We have an engineering firm. We have an orthodontist. So these people are doing it, in large, mostly because it aligns their personal values with their business operations, and it benefits them in terms of the bottom line, which I'll address in a moment, and it distinguishes them. There's another thing I wanted to talk about that happened a couple of years ago in Maryland, in Annapolis, in the legislature. The state was the first in the nation to create a new corporate status called a benefit corporation, and then a year later, last year, they actually created a benefit LLC. And basically, these are for-profit companies which by law are required to do 3 things. Create a material positive impact on society and the environment. 2, expand fiduciary duty to require consideration of non-financial interests such as the environment and society when making decisions. And 3rd, they have the annual report on the progress they're making and the degree to which they're actually impacting positively the environment and society. And they need to use third-party standards to do that. And actually, in this year's legislative session, the Montgomery delegation introduced legislation, enabling legislation to allow Montgomery County the authority to give property tax credit to benefit corporations and benefit LLCs. So that doesn't make any money yet, and we have to create the legislation and provide funding. And who knows, we're fiscally constrained, but who knows down the line. It's certainly the first step, so that's an exciting thing. In terms of, benefiting their bottom line, so we know the impact on the environment is a positive one, but how do they benefit from doing this? Well, A, through direct savings. And I can give you some examples from some of the certified green businesses in Montgomery County. Marriott Corporation, they're headquartered here in Montgomery County. They saved $100,000 a year simply by shifting from evening cleaning to daytime cleaning so that they could turn the lights off at night. The Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, which is a partner in the program, and by the way, Montgomery College is a partner in the program. It's the Department of Environmental Protection, Montgomery College, and the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. But the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce is also certified in the program. They say 50, and it's a small operation. I mean, it's only, I think it's probably less than 10 folks that work there. But they're saving $50,000 simply by reducing the size of event program books that they have at all their award dinners, etc. Goodwill International, also headquartered here in the county, they're saving $8,000 a year through its fixed cost purchase of 100% clean energy over 2 years. And there's financial incentives offered at both the state and the county level. Whether it's the state providing the Maryland Community Tax Credit Program, they'll match an employer's contribution that's offering commuter benefits, transit subsidies, van pooling, etc. We in the county have the Rainscapes program, stormwater, which is directed towards stormwater management, probably the key priority for our department. So that will give a business or an organization $5,000 rebate for managing their stormwater, basically preventing it from going into the storm drain with pollutants and sediments and eroding the banks. And so that's a $5,000 incentive to plant a rain garden or conservation landscaping. There's LEED Gold and Platinum property tax credits as well. And one of the things that the Chamber speaks about a great deal when we're pitching the program to audiences is the federal procurement opportunities that are coming down the pipe. In October 2009, the Obama administration signed an executive order which committed the federal government and its contractors and its suppliers to reduce carbon emissions. And in Montgomery County, I believe we're number 2 in the nation in terms of small business federal contracting. So if you want to position yourself to be competitive in procurement with the federal government, they're in the midst of developing an approach to developing contracting advantages to companies that actually track and disclose their greenhouse gas emission. And so the Green Business Certification Program sort of puts them on that path to be more competitive in competing for federal contracts. And then finally, there's intangibles that Accenture certainly talked about. When you get a situation where an employee is doing meaningful work and it aligns with his or her values. I mean, there are studies out there that suggest that productivity increases and commitment increases and retention increases. And so, you lose a key player on your staff, an employee, that costs a lot of money in terms of lost future revenue, experience and contacts, lost knowledge, new training, loss of productivity while they're considering whether or not to leave the organization. I've seen studies that suggest that, I was reading a book the other day, it was a few years old, but it was talking about a $60,000 employee with a $60,000 salary. And they estimated that all those costs, the sort of variables that I described, can translate into like $120,000 loss when you lose that key employee. So these intangibles can be measured and should be measured and make a difference. So, great.
Well, great to hear what the county's doing through programs and policies to promote sustainability. Great to hear how the business community is responding with sustainability innovations of their own. And then finally, how it can be good for business from a financial perspective and from gathering some intangible value from it. I'm sure many of the audience are here today because they care about sustainability in the local community. They want to think globally and act locally. I wonder if you could both build on your initial comments and speak to some things that local residents can do to reduce their own ecological footprint, be sustainability minded, and have an impact themselves.
Yeah, sure. Well, we're living in a resource constrained world. There's 7 billion and counting, and now expected to hit 9 billion by 2050. So we're currently using the resources of 1.5 Earths, meaning we're using 50% more ecological capacity than our current consumption patterns can sustain. So basically we're in what scientists would call ecological overshoot, meaning our annual demand on resources is exceeding what this one Earth can regenerate each year in terms of cropland, forests, pastures, fisheries, etc. And it's exceeding the amount of waste and pollution that the Earth can absorb. So to meet today's consumption demands, we're basically depleting the stocks of fish, trees, and other resources and accumulating excess waste, such as carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and oceans. It's as if we're using a credit card on nature, our very life support system, spending or using up our natural capital reserves instead of the income or the annual replenishment from our natural capital. We can do this for a time, sure, we have been. That's how we get to 1.5 Earths. But eventually, like the person who spends beyond his means, things implode. So there's warning signs out there for sure. I mean, whether it's collapsing fisheries, according to the Environmental Defense Fund worldwide, it's estimated that some 90% of species of large predatory fish, like swordfish tuna, are gone. Soil erosion, there's a Cornell University report done a few years ago. Soil is being swept and washed away 10 to 40 times faster than it's being replenished, destroying cropland the size of Indiana every year. Diminishing forest cover, half the world's tropical and temperate forests are now gone, and deforestation in the tropics continued at about an acre a second. Climate change, of course, we're all familiar with that. The hottest record on hottest decade from 2001 to 2010. In 2008, both the Northwest and Northeast passages both opened for the first time in human history. So if you had a little motorboat on the top of the Earth, you go all the way around the top of the Earth in the Arctic Circle over there. So Gus Speth, who founded the World Resources Institute and co-founded the National Resources Defense Council, and is the former dean of the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, so he's a really serious, prominent guy, said the following: how serious is the threat to the environment? All we have to do to destroy the planet's climate and biota and leave a ruined world to our children and grandchildren is to keep doing exactly what we're doing today, with no growth in the human population or the world economy. That's from his book, The Bridge at the End of the World. Don't worry, I won't depress us too well. I'll get to the positive stuff in a second. But I think a key point I want to make is that the U.S., we are disproportionately contributing to these environmental problems because of our consumption-intensive lifestyles. So with less than 5% of the global population, the U.S. accounts for 33% of global consumption and about a quarter of the world's carbon emissions. And compared to other industrialized nations, the U.S. per capita ecological footprint is 70% more than that of Japan's, 60% more than Switzerland or the UK, and 360% more than China on a per capita basis. So now to the good parts, the empowering parts. So what can we do? What should we all be doing to reduce our ecological footprint? Well, practice conscious consumption. Go to stores like All Eco Center, where he's really focused on a reduced ecological footprint. Get off the more is better treadmill. We all have to do that. So we need to buy less stuff, I think. I know. In his book, Sustainability by Design, the author, John Ehrenfeld, talks about the need for deep cultural change to move us toward a sustainable society. He cites the philosopher Erich Fromm, who said more than 30 years ago, and I quote, "We have moved from a being mode of life to a having mode of life, creating this pathology in which I am equals what I have and what I consume." Ehrenfeld says, only a shift to being can save both the human species and the natural world in which we live. So use your purchasing power to spur or to reward green product and service providers. Ask store managers when you go into a store to carry environmentally preferable products. Think about the life cycle. Think about the life cycle costs of a product. It's embedded energy, sort of the amount of energy that went into the production of that product, and the amount of material used to manufacture, to produce, and to refine that product. The ring on my finger, my wedding band, I've seen a reference to a study suggesting that producing a ring like this disturbs like three tons of natural material, exerting significant stress on the environment. But that would have been a hard thing to say no to a wedding band for my. So no one's perfect, and I'm hardly perfect. But for a great resource, and here's a shameless plug for a new county Department of Environmental Protection program. It's My Green Montgomery, and I gave it to Dean Sneezek here to put around the campus. But this lists like 40 different actions in a bunch of different categories for you to help to lighten your footprint. And we want to hear back from you in terms of your successes, or if you have questions, write us. We really feel like this is the one-stop shop for a locally based guide to reducing your ecological footprint. And check out the Center for a New American Dream. This is also they're an organization in Charlottesville. The Story of Stuff has a great website too. And in terms of specific actions that we can take, and then I'll be quiet, eat less meat. Eat less meat. Yes, it's estimated that livestock production generates nearly a fifth of the world's greenhouse gases. So the extent that we could do a Meatless Monday, Google Meatless Monday is an organization that's trying to encourage people to at least opt out of a burger or a steak a week. That's a very significant thing that we all can do. And as I said, buy less stuff. For gifts, consider buying experiences. Here in Montgomery County, we're blessed with experiences you could buy. So that's AFI tickets, or Strathmore tickets, or what's that new Fillmore? I have to go there still. The Fillmore, or take a trip on a nature trail in the Audubon Natural Society. All these things are available to us. Take a staycation. Meaning stay around and take advantage of these things instead of flying. One transatlantic flight creates more carbon emissions than driving the average American car for an entire year. Buy used clothing. Buy items with recycled content, organic materials, and organic foods, and that have third-party certification. Green Seal, Forest Stewardship Council, EPEAT Computers, Energy Star Appliances, USDA Organic, Montgomery County Certified Green Business. Buy clean energy. In Maryland, it's a deregulated market, so while your utility might be Pepco, you can make a selection on your provider. So you could buy clean energy, and you can go to this website, My Green Montgomery, and you'll get links to different companies, suppliers that are providing clean energy. Take advantage of the Rainscapes rebate program that I referred to. That was $5,000 for organizations or businesses, but it's also $1,200 for homeowners if you have property. Get an energy audit. They're only $100 subsidized, and someone will come to your house for 2 hours or so and determine where there's leaks, where you can do some winterization, etc. And then get energy efficiency retrofits. And finally, get involved. Get involved with Silver Spring Green, a new organization that's developed. Bethesda Green, if you live over there, or Poolsville Green, or Green Wheaton. Dave is on the board of Green Wheaton. And a lot of these certified green businesses are leading the charge in the development of these grassroots organizations, which is really exciting to see. So it sort of gets to that convergence thing that Accenture focuses on, but at a local level. So we have government, business, and residents. I should stop there.
That's great. Thanks, Doug. Well, some chilling statistics to compel us to action, and some great examples of concrete things people can do. And Dave, maybe building on that, what are some tangible things you've done or your customers have done to have an impact?
Well, I'm an example of a former Montgomery College student and just someone trying to do their small part. I'm an entrepreneur, but with a focus on green and sustainability. It could be applied to anyone or anything. Really, it's just all of us doing our small part. Turning off the lights when we're not using it, not consuming more than we need to. We need to really absorb these shocking figures and statistics and not just see them as that, but our reality, and think about small ways we can just make a difference. Doesn't matter if you're a student in business, large companies, small companies. If we all just did a little bit, it would make all the difference in the world, I think.
Great, thanks. I want to open up for questions soon, but maybe just to loop it back global one more time, Roger. We've talked about sustainability locally and a lot of things that businesses are doing with respect to environmental sustainability. There's this phrase in the development sector of inclusive business. What does that mean, and how are businesses changing their behaviors, their way of engaging at a global level?
Sure. Well, you have heard a lot about environmental sustainability, and that really was what I'll say the start of a lot of companies looking at what we call the triple bottom line, their profit, their people, and the environment. And that kind of led companies also to think more about how they can get involved with social issues and what they need to do when they enter new markets around the globe. And that really led to the phrase of what they're calling inclusive business. So when a company, when a large multinational, maybe it could be an Accenture, it could be a Unilever, it could be even an ExxonMobil, enters one of the countries around the globe, they can't just work with a single segment of that country, the high-end consumer. and think that they're going to be able to grow and be sustainable in that country over time. Yes, there is, profit to be made short term. You can enter a market and sell all the ice cream you want to the highest end consumer in a developing market, but you're not going to be sustainable over time. You're not going to economically develop that country and be able to roll out your brand globally. So businesses are looking more at this term inclusive business to mean engaging smallholder farmers or small suppliers into their value chain, so folks that can actually produce part of the solution that is being sold. I talked about the Unilever example earlier. I mean, if Unilever is going to be selling a soup product, let's say, into a country, they want to have the farmers within that country actually grow some of the vegetables that is put into that soup. At the same time, the other side of inclusive business may mean the actual suppliers or distributors of that finished soup product. So they want to make sure that that product can be sold to individual markets in rural villages and include those folks. So you can see that whole value chain being developed. Everybody is going to win and ultimately work as an ecosystem together for economic development. And that will address many of the social problems that we've seen. So we talked earlier on about an NGO just simply at maybe stage one of development, pushing food, raw food product into a community over time. That funding is going to run out. So the idea of a business then getting involved and being inclusive, as we just talked about, is really the theme that's resonating in the boardrooms of the major corporations, including Accenture and its clients around the globe. And really, again, as the world develops, most companies that are thinking globally are now thinking the next decade, the next 2 decades of their customer base is going to be coming from these developing markets. It's not going to be coming from the US, it's going to be coming from markets across Africa or Southeast Asia or anywhere else, what we call the global south, these developing markets. That's really the next generation of consumer. And the whole idea of inclusive business is making sure that that entire community is involved when a company enters that market.
Great discussion. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. Hopefully it was interesting for you to hear this vast diversity of perspectives on sustainability, from the local community to working emerging markets to how you can apply it in your home to how technology can be leveraged. And I think Roger summed it up well. I think you used to think about your own careers and the world in terms of this is what government does, this is what nonprofits do, this is what businesses do. And I think the point that's been made on this panel is that issues of sustainability, everyone has to play a role in this. No one type of organization is going to solve these problems. And you need business, you need government, you need nonprofits working together to solve these problems. And that whatever career path your careers take you or your life takes you, there's a way for you to get engaged in these issues. So thanks very much.
Let's thank our panel.